Hello friends, welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, welcome. I love this time of year in my kitchen. Testing out new recipes with fresh ingredients is one of my favorite things to do, and today that is exactly what I'm going to be doing. This time of year usually welcomes a bunch of different visitors from out of town, so I'm always looking for some fresh recipes that I can share with family members or friends that are in from out of town. I also like recipes that I can make ahead of time and put in the freezer, and this is a perfect one for that. So I found a recipe for a blueberry muffin loaf, and that is what I'm going to be making today. This is a great make ahead recipe, something that you can make now, put in the freezer, and get out whenever you have guests, or something you can whip together in the morning and serve for breakfast. I'll have this recipe along with the other recipe from today's video down below in the description box if you want to try it out for yourself. But I'm starting off by mixing together the liquid ingredients. So I have butter in here and sugar. I mixed those together until they started to get fluffy. Now I'm going to be adding the vanilla, the eggs, and I'll whip it together before I add in the dry ingredients. In a separate bowl, I'm going to combine the dry ingredients, so a couple cups of flour and then the baking powder. I'm going to mix those together. I like incorporating those before I add them to the wet ingredients. So I'm going to mix them together in this separate bowl, and then I will slowly add it to the wet ingredients. However, I do want to keep just a little bit in this bowl because you'll want to toss the blueberries in it before you're adding it to the batter. That way they don't just sink to the bottom, and they'll be evenly distributed throughout the loaf. Now you can add a glaze to the top of this or just dust it with some powdered sugar. I didn't end up doing any of that, and my kids and husband didn't seem to mind it. So I didn't do that. However, I feel like that would be a really nice touch. So like I said, I added the dry ingredients to the rest of the batter in my mixer, but I reserved about 1/4 cup of the flour mixture to toss the blueberries in. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to toss them, and then I'm going to gently fold them into the batter. If you've been here a while, you know that I'm a complete stickler for whenever you make bread, adding the parchment paper to the bottom of it. I don't know what got over me this morning, but I completely forgot to add the parchment paper, and I was totally kicking myself because I remembered exactly immediately after I added all of this in. It just helps it come out so much nicer, and then also it helps with cleanup. So whenever you are making pretty much anything in a bread loaf, it is so much nicer to use parchment paper, and that way you can kind of just lift it right out of the pan, and it's just easier to deal with. And I was definitely kicking myself that I did not do that. If you saw my previous video where I was talking about my Monstera not doing so well in the front of the house and I moved it back here, it is doing so much better back here. It absolutely loves the backyard, so I'm really glad that I made that move because it has really improved its health. When we moved here a couple years ago from Chicago, we were so worried that our kids would be bored, and one of the biggest selling points for this house was definitely the pool, because we were so worried that they wouldn't have anything to do in the area, because we are in a tourist town, but it's such a small town and there's really just not enough to do. So we were really worried about them, especially when we first moved here, because they hadn't gone to school here yet. We didn't know anyone, and so we were super worried about them just being totally bored out of their minds the first summer that we were here. And the biggest selling point was definitely the pool, and they get so much use out of it. I'm so glad we ended up going with the house with the pool, because man, they use it so much. And if they're not on the trampoline, they're absolutely in the pool. Here's how the blueberry muffin bread turned out. This was absolutely delicious, and I feel like I said, the only thing that would just make it completely over the top would be like a nice glaze on top, or even just a dusting of powdered sugar, but it was definitely good even without it. I am going to get something going in the crock pot today. Now, this is something that I feel like is a little weird to have this time of year. However, my kids specifically asked for it. And I love a good crock pot meal, and I'll have them all summer long. I don't even care, because it just makes it that much easier. Something that I can throw together in the morning, be able to take the kids to the park or go swimming or something, and then come in in the evening, and it's all done for you. So I'm going to be making my copycat Olive Garden chicken gnocchi soup. A little bit of a mouthful, but I'm going to be making that. And what I like to do is I like to start it on the stove, and then I move it all to the crock pot. So I'm doing the bacon. I'm dicing up about 6 pieces, and I like to use scissors instead of cutting it, just because it seems to go a lot quicker. So I'm cutting them up in small pieces, and then I'm going to, once this is all cooked, I'll set it aside, and I will start cooking the carrots and celery and onions. This dish was actually something that I've had in my pantry for a couple of weeks now, because for a while there it was raining constantly, and it's warm here, but it was kind of cooler for like a couple weeks because of the rain. And so I was like, you know what, that's perfect weather for some soup. I love it. Doesn't even, like I said, it doesn't even matter if it is hot out. I will enjoy some soup, especially on a rainy day. So I had this for a couple of weeks, and then randomly my daughter was like, you know what sounds really good? Gnocchi. And I feel like as a mom, when you're constantly having to figure out what your family is going to eat for like the rest of your life, it gets so repetitive, and I'm always looking for suggestions and stuff from other people in my house, so I don't have to make those decisions. So the fact that she was like, that sounds really good, and I had all the ingredients, I'm like, perfect, that will be exactly what we have. So I put that together and got it going in the crock pot. And it was also the perfect day, even though it wasn't raining. It was perfect because we had a project going on outside. I was always so wanting to get some cleaning done. So it really allowed for us to get those things done and then come in the evening and have dinner already ready for us. While the bacon is cooking on the stove, I'm going to get the chicken going in the crock pot. For my family of 6, 2 large chicken breasts is perfect size for our family. So that is what I'm using. And then the bacon is done. So I'm going to put that over top. And then, like I said, same pan, I'm going to cook the onions, celery, and the carrots. You definitely do not have to cook those on the stove if you don't want to. You could just put them right in the crock pot, but I always like doing it on the stove, especially if I'm cooking the bacon at the same time. I just like the flavor that it adds, so that's why I'm doing that. And oftentimes I won't cook it all the way through. I'll just usually start it and then put it in the crock pot. But if you're wanting to skip that step, you could just dice it up and put it in the crock pot. And another thing you could also do is just use like the bag of frozen vegetables. I'm sure I've done that before in a pinch too. So in the crock pot, I have the 2 chicken breasts, the bacon, and now the vegetables. So I'm going to add in some cornstarch, or you could do flour if you want, just to make sure that it thickens as it cooks. So I'm going to put the cornstarch in, and I kind of coat everything inside with the cornstarch, just to kind of, I think I was using just whatever was left in here, but that will help if you just kind of coat everything, like all the vegetables and stuff, with it, and it thickens while it cooks. Then I'll slowly add in the chicken broth, just kind of mixing it in as I go, and I will add in the seasonings. I usually will add in, so it kind of depends what you're using. You can use like cream if you're wanting, milk. I use evaporated milk in my soup, but I don't add it in until the end pretty much. So what I do is I will have this cook in the crock pot for a majority of the time, and then about an hour to 2 hours before it's done, then I will add in the gnocchi and mix that in, and that's usually when I add the evaporated milk as well. I'm going to get all of this mixed together, get the crock pot started, and then we're going to go outside and see what everybody else is up to. So a little bit of an FYI, just in case you are hearing it in my voiceover, but I keep hearing a frog croaking, and that is actually right outside of my office window. And so I keep pressing record for my voiceover, and then I hear like a ribbit. And so if you hear that too, that is my voiceover. There is a frog outside of my window. I haven't been able to find it, but I can definitely hear it. I am so excited for my garden this year. I added so many more flowers. We also did wildflowers, so I wanted to share how that has been going. These are just so beautiful. I love how that has like the little yellow ring around the center of it. It's just so pretty. And honestly, I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. I have wanted wildflowers and to add more flowers in the garden for quite a while now, so I'm so glad that we finally did it this year. Okay, so it has been several hours, and like I said, I usually will add in the gnocchi about an hour to 2 hours before the soup is actually done. So I think it's an hour and a half before it's actually done, and I'm going to add in that package. I'll mix it up, and then this is also whenever I add in the 2 cans of evaporated milk. So I'm going to get all of those added in and mixed together now, and then we'll let it cook the rest of the way, and I'll share with you how it turned out. And honestly, if you have been here for a while and you have watched my recipe videos for a while, I'm sure you've seen this a couple of times because this is a family favorite of ours. I have been making it for a number of years, and it is always a favorite. Here's how the soup turned out. I honestly like serving this with like some crusty bread, and that's usually what I do, or I'll make bread bowls and serve it in the bread bowls, but I didn't this evening just because I was working outside and wanted to keep things simple. So I mentioned to you that we were going to be going outside and working on some projects outside. While I was working on the garden, my husband was kind of tackling this project, and I wanted to get out here and get a before shot for you. But we have these poles, they're aluminum on the outside of them, and we, for the longest time, we didn't really know what we were wanting. So we finally figured it out, and my husband's going to be putting some wood around them. We'll end up staining them and coating them and doing all of that fun stuff with them. But if you saw the boxes that we had around the post to begin with, they were actually there for a reason. So a couple of years ago, we got Ted, and he was just a puppy when we got him in this house. And he still is wild, but he was a wild puppy, and he would chew up and tear up everything. And I think that was just like a puppy thing. However, Milo, our other dog, he never really did that at all. So it was kind of a new thing. And then he just got older, and I think he had anxiety too. So anyway, one thing he did was he would chew up basically everything, and he would create cracks in the cement around our pool and then try to eat the cement. So one of the places that he would constantly dig and get it to is around the pole that my husband's actually working on now. So to kind of deter him from that, we added those boxes, and also it covered up the cement that he had messed up. So that was the purpose of the boxes in the first place. And then from that, it was kind of like we didn't really know what we wanted to do. We had trouble finding large enough pieces of wood to cover it. And now a couple years later, he's no longer chewing up things like that. And we have decided, you know what? Let's just go ahead and we'll do smaller pieces of wood. And I'm honestly really happy with how it turned out. At first, I was a little nervous because, like I said, we were looking for larger pieces to make it look like large beams, but we just couldn't find them, at least in any of the places that we have around us, and which really is not very many. So we ended up doing smaller pieces of wood, and we just wrapped the aluminum poles, and then Kyle secured them in place. Now we are thinking that we'll probably do like trim to the top and bottom, and then, like I said, we're going to stain it and all that fun stuff. But for starters, we just wanted to get them covered and done and just kind of check another box off of our list. I talked in a recent video about the 1% of things around the house and getting to those little projects that they don't take very long. They're easy to just do, but you put them off because you just do other things. And this was something that was kind of one of those 1% projects. It was a small thing to do. It didn't take very long at all. I mean, not even an entire afternoon for him to put everything together and to get it secured to the beams. So this was another one of those 1% projects, and it just feels so good because if you are a homeowner, it is like the list to fix things and work on things, for one, I don't think is ever ending. The list is so long. And so it feels really good to finally, after years of having this on our list, to officially have it done. Or I guess in our case, it is not done, but you know what I mean. It's up, it's started, and one of the days that he's at work, I will probably just get a stain and stuff from the garage and work on it and get it knocked out and officially done. I'm curious if you have any of those 1% projects. What are your 1% projects? Just the little projects that don't take very long to get done, that have been on your list for quite a while. What are some things that you have to do too? I know that another thing that I have to probably work on pretty quickly here is trellises. We have a bunch of scrap wood, and one thing that I am wanting to do is put together some trellises for our vines that I'm growing, and I'm growing them in different places this year, so I'm pretty excited about it. However, I need to get moving on the trellises because they are already climbing pretty high in the areas that I've put them. Oh, and now that I'm thinking about it in this area, another project that I'm wanting to get done, and I think I already have the stuff for it, so I really should just work on it, but I want to repaint and like do touch-ups to the doors out back. Ted, he is still wild, like I said, and he jumps on the doors and he kind of leaves scratch marks. So I'm wanting to touch up and repaint some of the doors in the back. And I feel like if I already have all the paint, I might as well get to it. But anyway, here is how the beams turned out for now. Like I said, we're going to finish them up here very quickly and get them all done. But we are so happy with how they turned out. I just absolutely love it. And speaking of Ted, so he keeps jumping up on the door because he's inside of my bedroom peeking through, and I'll show you in just a moment. But it's funny because he has a cone around his neck because he has like this spot that he keeps licking, and I don't want it to get worse. But anyway, he's right here peeking out at me, and I just thought it was so funny because he had the cone around his neck. But anyway, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.